this transition from screen to soil.
Oh, I like that. From screen to soil. If you want to be a leading lady, you're going to have to look like a leading lady. The industry has really changed quite a lot. It is so hard and so terrifying. On top of that was this love-hate relationship with my body. And after 10 years, I kind of had this epiphany where I was like, I just don't think I want to do this anymore. It's taking a toll on my mental well-being. My brain felt tired from trying to make it work. What the hell do I do now? If I feel fear, I have to walk towards it. And it's really served me quite well.
Sometimes you just have to let go of one dream for the next to appear.
I felt so useless, but I also felt like I wanted to do more, but I had no idea what that was going to be. When you own your own business, there's no one telling you, no, you can't do that. Really find the purpose and the value in it for you, because that is going to be what keeps you going. There was a big part of me as a mum that felt guilt that my time was divvied up between starting a business and raising 2 small kids. They've seen us build something, and they will continue to see us build something. We were never going to compromise. In the words of my father, get on with it. It's only you getting in the way of that.
Matilda,
Josh,
thank you so much for having us.
thank you for having me.
Till, I'm really interested in your creative journey, and that's going to be our focus today. I think your exploration of different creative forms and this transition from screen to soil is going to be a fascinating discussion.
I like that. From screen to soil.
I know. But before we get into that, before we get to the detail of where you are today and the business you're building with your husband, Scott, I want to go back. If you think about a 10-year-old Matilda, a household of creators, a household of creatives, did that feed, do you think, part of that interest in creating your own world?
Probably. I mean, it was definitely a creative household. It wasn't a spiritual household. I definitely felt that I was a little bit laughed at for the spiritual side, but certainly very creative. I mean, growing up on sets, we traveled a lot. We got to sort of rotate between the kids of who went on a trip with mum to, when she was filming, and dad when he was filming. So a lot of travel, a lot of like weekend art projects. Mum was always, okay, we're doing paper mache this weekend. And there was never a 9-to-5 job situation. So I guess conversation of work there was never no talk about work. It was creative in that sense.
Speaking about film, speaking about acting, directing, producing, the whole world.
I mean, it's interesting when you grow up with parents that are in the film industry, because as a kid, you don't understand that there's any other way of being. It wasn't until I was probably starting high school that I started to understand that mum and dad's job was very different from other people's parents' work. And I remember a girl coming up to me in year 7 and going, my mum and dad said that your mum and dad are famous. And I was like, are they? Like it never occurred to me growing up, because it was a very normal household. I think maybe people think that it's really different to other people's families, but it's not. But I guess as I grew older, there were obviously big differences.
Yes. Yeah, I think you made a great point that I think a lot of people do think it would be very different as a family dynamic with parents that have a high public profile and highly recognizable in the street. And so my next question, I was thinking about whether you ever had any sense of having to share your parents. Like, was there ever a sense that they weren't exclusively yours if they were recognized, or was there some real pride in that?
I mean, there were certainly times where you'd be out having lunch and someone would come up and say, I'm so sorry to interrupt, but can I get a photo with you, Brian or Rachel? And, there was times where dad would, I think in the moment, he would make the decision about whether or not it was okay in that moment. And sometimes he would say, no, I'm sorry, I'm just having lunch with my family. But there was, when he did the Shirley, which was my favorite film of his growing up, there was a little girl who plays his daughter. And I found their relationship in that film was so real to me. And I was so young, I couldn't understand that I didn't understand it. I didn't understand that she was acting. And so I remember actually, I don't remember this, but I remember their relationship being quite hard for me. And then Dad said when we came to the set to film, to visit the set, she got really confused about our relationship because they had such a close relationship on the set that she found it really difficult. So it was a kind of interesting. And then there's times where Dad gets his head shot out, or he gets a spear through him, and you're watching it as an 8-year-old kid, not understanding at all what's going on, even though you've been to sets. So yeah, kind of some confusing stuff.
So confusing stuff. Absolutely. And as you were sort of finding your own voice within that environment with some big personalities and creative people, and I imagine the people around you, the friends of the family and family functions included a bunch of big personalities and interesting people doing fascinating things.
Yes and no. I mean, I think I would argue that there's big personalities and fascinating people in all walks of life.
True.
Not just in, creative industries. But I always felt a little bit like I didn't love the side of the business that was, I don't know, like the glitz and glamour of the business. Like there was something about it always for me, and probably is why I'm not in it anymore. Like I always felt really uncomfortable with red carpets and events and lights and meeting people that I met Brad Pitt at one of Dad's at the Along Came Polly premiere, and Dad was like, "Go, come on, I'll introduce you to Brad," and I was like, "No." And he was like, "Come on, I'll introduce you to Brad. Of course you want to meet Brad." And I was 15. And I just remember thinking, Brad doesn't want to meet me.
All right.
Like I just couldn't, I don't know. I've always been drawn to, I don't know, just like real relationships.
Yes.
And that sort of stuff, the hype of it all has never appealed to me at all.
Yes, I totally get that. And I think what I'm trying to contextualize for the audience is how within an environment where you were exposed to such high level creativity at such a young age, and you started to feel your own creativity coming through beyond building forts and exploring spirituality as much as a 10-year-old can, that's a fascinating sidebar, which I would love to go into, but I won't right now. How did you first start to think about expressing yourself creatively before acting? Or was acting the first opportunity for you to really explore your own creative potential?
I don't think I really started to explore really what creativity was for me until I started making films. And even then, I think it's taken me a long time to really understand what creativity is for me, if I even understand it at all. But I guess, I did my first film, TV show when I was 9. At that point for me, it was, I'm just going to have a go at this. I didn't really understand if I was any good at it, or I thought maybe it'd be fun. There was a show that Dad was doing. It was called Twisted Tales. Every episode was a half an hour. And Dad said, "Till, there's 2 episodes that have a 9-year, a young girl in it if you want to audition for them." And I was like, "Can't you just give me the role?" But no, I had to audition for them. Didn't get the first one that I really wanted, but I auditioned for the other one and I got it. And you know what? It was really fun. Like, I think that's one of the things about the film industry. It's just fun. You get to go into the makeup trailer, you have your makeup done, you go into the wardrobe trailer, you get dressed up, you try on clothes. Is that right? No, it's not. Let's try that. The only really hard part about it for me at that point was just making sure I got my lines right. You
Yeah.
know, just going like, oh yeah, shit, I have to learn lines. It's not all fun. I think that I was like, yeah, I could do that for my life. That would be all right. I don't think I ever thought that I ever would do it. When I was sort of thinking about what I was going to do later on in life, I was going, oh, maybe I'll be a lawyer, maybe I'll be a paleontologist. But
Quite a spectrum.
yeah, I obviously had no idea what I wanted to do. But I ended up going to, I ended up deciding, I was like, okay, I'm going to try and be an actress. And then Mum, because she had gone through this herself, she had been an actress and then her career had dwindled at around age 30 and she had gone back to university and studied at UTS. And she was like, well, great, if you're going to be an actress, that's fine, but get something else behind you. Don't just be an actress. Because in Australia, it's hard. And as a woman, it's even harder to have a long career. So I went to film school and, and I studied professional screenwriting at RMIT and film and TV at Swinburne. And at that point, I thought, I actually had no idea where it was going to lead me. When you go to film school, the teachers there are often people who have tried to make it in film. And in Australia, it's really hard to make a living. And so they're teaching. And they always say, probably 1% of you guys will actually make a living out of this, which is true.
Not encouraging though.
Not encouraging, but you do have to you have to be realistic about it. Anyway, I ended up moving back to Sydney because I studied in Melbourne. And I said to Dad, what the hell do I do now? How do I become a filmmaker? How do I become an actress? I didn't have an agent. Well, I sort of inherited an agent through Mum and Dad, really. So I kind of did have an agent, but I hadn't earned an agent. And he goes, well, you do what every filmmaker does when they're starting out. You make a Tropfest film. And so that's what I did. I was like, oh, and it scared the bejesus out of me to actually kind of go, oh my God, I think I'm actually going to have to try and attempt to make something now. Yeah. And that was the beginning of sort of creating, like trying to make a career out of acting, writing, and directing.
Because it strikes me that that is a real pivot from being an actor and waiting to be chosen, not waiting, auditioning and going through all the stress of that process, but ultimately being chosen or not being chosen, as opposed to being the author of your own vehicle. Was that quite conscious at the time, or were you seeking the opportunity to take a bit more control over your destiny by that process?
I mean, I was 23, so I hadn't really. I mean, I just moved back from film school, and I was like, okay, I've either got to get a job, or I've got to try and make some money through this industry. So I was going to auditions, and I was getting roles. I auditioned for Underbelly, one of the first Underbellies, and I actually got the main role in that, but I turned it down because you had to be okay with being completely naked for like most of the shoot. And Mum was like, oh, absolutely not. And it's funny because it was on the cusp of like before everybody suddenly nudity was such a normal thing and it was kind of like around Underbelly time that it became that. Before that you really wouldn't see boobs on TV. But so it was a hard thing to kind of navigate at that age. Do I really want to be in scenes where I'm just naked? So anyway, I turned that down, but I got another role in it that was way less.
But clothed.
Clothes, yes. And then, I was, in a bunch of little other supporting roles in TV shows. And so I was getting work as an actress. But I guess I was always drawn to sort of telling stories. And so Tropfest I wrote it, directed it, acted in it, and got in to Tropfest. And that was actually like an incredible start to, it really did help me. There was a lot of press around it. I was suddenly kind of considered a filmmaker. I myself suddenly considered myself a filmmaker because it's like you don't. How do you call yourself a filmmaker if you've never done anything?
Yes.
Gosh, we're going back a while, aren't we? I haven't thought about this chapter of my life for a while.
I think what's really interesting about this, Tel, is that your emergence as a storyteller, and you said that you started to think of yourself as a filmmaker, because how could you until you really started making your own films? And the identity that you were starting to form around filmmaker, but you also said storyteller. And I'm really interested in distinguishing between the two, if there is a distinction for you. There's the professional side. I've studied film. I understand how to make films, but there's an identity that seems to be starting to emerge around storytelling.
Yeah, I think the thing for me when I was younger, and potentially this is where I maybe didn't reach my potential as a filmmaker, is that I think that you can be a filmmaker, right? You can know how to shoot, how to put it all together. But as a storyteller, you really have to have like a point of view. And that point of view it can take a long time to work out who you are and what stories you want to tell. And at 23, I didn't really even know myself. I didn't really know what stories I wanted to tell and what kind of filmmaker I wanted to be. And so I think it's really important to dabble. You know, I think I was really hard on myself. I would look back on the things that I'd made and kind of at the time kind of think they were shit. But now I look back on them and I'm like, they were so clever. Like I wish that I had seen that more. Like gone, you're 23. Just keep playing. Like don't judge yourself so harshly. But I think I judged myself so harshly, I almost like pushed myself away from how fun it can be. Like I didn't. And I think the other thing about it is when you're trying to make money from it, it adds a whole nother level of pressure because you have to kind of think commercially at some point. You have to put that hat on as well, but you're still trying to work out who you are and what you want to say. And yeah, that's hard. That's hard when you're young. I have only just kind of worked that out.
Absolutely. I'm still trying to figure it out for myself. Yeah. So well done. Congratulations.
I mean, like, yeah, I'm still going. It is it. And also because you're evolving all the time, aren't you? We're evolving all the time. Yeah. And so I don't think there's ever a, by God, I've got it moment. I don't think there is.
No, I agree. And I think that the distinction you made there between the technical training and understanding the technical elements as a producer, director, actor, the training that goes into understanding what's required versus the inner confidence in knowing I'm a storyteller and B, I'm becoming more comfortable with what that story should be. And that's a distinction that I think is incredibly relevant to what we're talking about right now, which is filmmaking. But I think it's relevant more broadly to creatives and entrepreneurs. What is it that I want to say?
Yes.
So I'd love to kind of transition to that shortly. But just to sort of round out exactly where we are now, at that point you were still wanting to push it further though, weren't you?
Yeah, I mean, like I was in this industry from, I would say like 15, when I did Martha's New Coat until about 30, early 30s. And all during my 20s, I was chipping away at it. Like I was going back and forth to LA. You know, there was a real moment where I had to go, okay, I've got to go over to LA and now, you know, throw my hat in the ring for pilot season, which again, scared the bejesus out of me. But oh my God, it was such a fun time of my life. I am so glad that I have this thing where if I feel fear, I have to walk towards it. I don't want to, but I force myself to. And it's really served me quite well in life. So yeah, LA was one of those things for me. Like, you know, mum sort of said, mum, She was like, you know, I think you've really got to go. You've got to go to LA. If you want to take this acting thing seriously, you got to go to LA. I was like, oh. Again, this is like when Dad said, you got to make a Trot Fest film. I was like, oh, sorry. Do I have to though? So off I go to LA. And the first time that I went out was the closest I ever got to like landing a big role. And it was, but it was like grueling. It was such an amazingly exciting part of my life. Like you do an audition. It's very different here. Here, you go in, you do an audition, you get told whether you got it or not. In LA, you go, you do an audition. Usually at that point it's just on camera. You know, they send it, and then if they like you, they go, okay, you've got to come in now and do it in front of them. And then if they like that, then they go, okay, now you've got to do it in front of all the producers. So you've got to come back in, now you've got to do it in front of all the producers. And then if they like you after that, then you've got to go to the network and do it in front of like the big wigs. It is so hard and so terrifying. But it was my first time doing pilot season. It was the second audition that I'd done, and I got to the network. So I went through all those things, got to the network, and it was funny. Like it was between me, the producer called me and he's like, we love you. We want you. We want you. All you have to do is come in and do it at the network. I'm rooting for you. And I thought I was going to land this role. And then I remember, it's funny, like I remember, I feel like I know when things leave, when the opportunity's gone.
Right.
Do you ever get that?
Yeah, absolutely.
You're like, so this is it. This is actually happening. And then it's really funny. Like there's a moment where it's like, almost like you feel the universe, it's like, no, this isn't the one for you. And I was like walking up Bronson Canyon. I'd go for a walk. That LA has these fabulous canyons everywhere and you can go for these great hikes. And I would do Bronson Canyon every morning. And I remember like walking up and I just went, oh, it's gone. And then sure enough, that afternoon, my manager called me and he was like, it hasn't gone your way. And that was heartbreaking. And that happened a few times over the next couple of years. I got really close. I wrote a script. I wrote a show. I got really close to selling it in LA. The deal was happening. I was going back and forth between my manager and the producers. And then I got on a plane to come back for Dad's 70th birthday party that he has. Every 10 years, him and Sam Neill have a big birthday party.
Great.
And so I came back for that. And on the other side of getting off the airplane, then my manager was like, I don't know what to tell you. It's just gone. It's just not going to happen. And that was around the time that I turned 30. And after 10 years of like pouring my heart and soul into it and really trying and like really getting close to things and then not getting them, I kind of like had this epiphany where I was like, I just don't think I want to do this anymore. And I always kind of liken it to the boyfriend that you're trying to make it work, but you just know he's no good for you and you've got to let it go. And I just knew like, I have to let this go. This isn't serving me anymore. And I'm giving so much more than I'm getting back. And that was around the time that I met Scott, like the end of that year I met Scott. And then I think my world really changed. Because on top of that was this whole thing that I was dealing with, which was this love-hate relationship with my body. And acting was really, it didn't help that at all. You know, my since I was a teenager, I've struggled with, I guess, like being okay with my body. My weight fluctuated all during my 20s. I had an eating disorder when I was 15. I was bulimic when I was 15. I was verging on anorexic when I was 23. Calorie counting, running 5Ks a day. So concerned about how I looked in front of the camera. because mum had said, if you want to be a leading lady, you're going to have to look like a leading lady. And, that's not to say that I'm not saying anything bad about my mum, but at that time, that was really the truth. The industry has really changed quite a lot, I think, since then. But even like descriptions of when you got like an audition, the description of the role you were going for was, beautiful, feisty, or something like that. And so, you're like, well, I hope I'm beautiful enough to play this role. You've got to have like such confidence in the way that you look, I think, to have the confidence to go in and be like, well, yeah, I can do that. I didn't have that. So yeah, I think that was this thing that was on top of it being really hard for me to actually break through and make a living out of this career. I was so exhausted from that side of it. Like I almost was just like, do you know what? I just don't want to do that anymore. I don't want to fight with this person. I just want to be comfortable. And funnily enough, then Scott enters my life and everything changes.
Everything changes. So you've identified you've got this real creative fire in you, and you use the word storyteller. You also spoke about how there were elements, at least, of that industry that were really fun and really positive. There are also elements that were incredibly stressful, were triggering in different ways, and there was just the relentless pressure of securing these opportunities. I think a lot of entrepreneurs, whether they are traditional creatives in the limited sense that we often use the word, or just more broadly, they're looking to do something new and interesting in business. There is this question of, do I persist or do I pivot? And there's one line of encouragement that we see on Instagram and social media and business books, and that is never, ever, ever give up on your dream. And there's this other seemingly contrary line of advice, which says you've got to be self-aware enough and courageous enough to recognize where you've got great things ahead of you, but you need to leave that vehicle behind and find a new one. And I just wonder if you could go back to the Matilda at that point in time. Ultimately, you made the right decision. But if you could go back with that little bit more experience and wisdom that you have today and whisper in her ear, what would you have said to her?
It's a funny one, isn't it? Because if you say something to her, then it changes the course.
It does.
Doesn't it? And
hypothetically.
Yeah, okay. Hypothetically. You can't whisper confidence. I'd love to say, just have confidence in yourself, but it's kind of not a magic button. That comes from life and the things that you go through. So I almost wouldn't change it. I almost wouldn't, because there were so many great things as well. It was also that doing all of that, I don't think that there was another direction for me to go in. I don't think I was meant to be in that industry. I think I was meant to be here doing what I'm doing now. But I learned so much from that industry.
Yes.
I learned so many skills. I learned so much about being creative. I learned about storytelling, and I use that now in everything that I do today. And so I'm really grateful that I had those 15 years in that industry. Because I think it was just preparing me for this next chapter of my life. And I think that one of the biggest things that I struggled with in the film industry as well was that there was always a gatekeeper. There's always someone telling you, no, you didn't get the audition. No, you didn't get that. If you're an actress, writer, director, but you're not a producer. You're not the person that's putting all the money in. And so for me, there was always a gatekeeper. And when you own your own business, you can work as hard as you want, and there's no one telling you, no, you can't do that. So that really works for me. I like that about where I am now.
Absolutely. And I think sometimes you just have to let go of one dream for the next to appear. There has to be a point in time where you let go and move on. Clients of mine and creatives that I've worked with over the years have struggled with that exact question. Like, it's, do I persist in this and just dig deeper and show a little more grit and develop a little more resilience? Or do I recognize the signals that I'm getting that though there are great things ahead of me, this is not the right vehicle for me? You said that really it came from within. It wasn't about any external stimuli or external input. You just knew at a point in time it was the right time to move on.
Yeah, no, definitely. I remember physically feeling tired from it all. Like, I remember feeling like it's taking a toll on my mental well-being. No, I felt tired. Like, my brain felt tired from trying to create, from trying to make it work. But also, there was a really strong thing that happened. There was also another pivotal moment where I really went, okay, I think I have to go in another direction. And that was when Scott and I moved back to the Northern Beaches, and I got pregnant with Zan. And at the day after I got pregnant, I went to Heron Island. Do you know Heron Island?
I do.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah. And there's a scientific research center on Heron Island. We learnt, it was 3 days, and it was very immersive, and we swam, we snorkeled, and we learned about the bleaching of the coral, and we learned about the impacts of climate change on the ocean, and like, it was pretty overwhelming. And I came back from it and I felt so useless. But I also felt like I wanted to do more, but I had no idea what that was going to be. But I was like, I want to do something. I want to have purpose in something more than, I guess, something more than just learning lines again and again and again and probably not getting the role. So it was this thing for me where I was like, I've got this, I'm pregnant, I'm going to have a child. What's that future going to look like for my child? And what am I going to do to help that?
Yes.
And then when Zan came along, I was still getting auditions. So I'd stopped for a while because I was pregnant. Obviously, I couldn't go and act. And it gave me it gave me a long time to think. There was about 9 months of doing nothing. And after that, then I had Zan, and I remember about 4 months I started to kind of go, okay, maybe I'll let my agents know I'm ready to act again. And then I remember going down and doing lines and reading the lines and being like, oh, I don't even fucking like these lines. These are shit. So I was like bitter and twisted about the fact that someone else has got a show that's not as good as mine. And now I'm learning lines. My kid's over there, like up there. I'm spending 4 days trying to get these lines in my head that I don't even like. And I'm going to go and do an audition that I don't get paid for. And I'm probably not going to get it. I couldn't work that out.
What am I doing?
What am I doing? It was such a, what am I doing with my life kind of moment. And, then it took 3 years thinking more and trying to work out what I was going to do.
And because in parallel, and you mentioned earlier that you met Scott and everything changed, and then we jumped ahead. I'd love to come back because it seems like there's some parallel tracks running here. Can you take us back to first meeting Scott? And a full disclosure, I know you through my long friendship with Scott, and now treasure our friendship. So I know this story, but the audience doesn't. Jumping back to meeting Scott, and you said everything changed. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, as I said, I'd had this long-term battle with my body and food. When I turned 15, or when I hit puberty, my body immediately changed. I got big boobs, I put on weight, and I really struggled with that because I was this lean, mean machine. And to try and fix that, I went on fad diet after fad diet after fad diet. Mum was trying to help me, but it was counterproductive. But I'd get home from school and there'd be a new diet because the other one hadn't worked. Then I'd try that diet, and then that wouldn't work. So for 10 years, I'd had, but at no point did I kind of go, maybe I should try and understand nutrition. So for 10 years, I just had these confusing and conflicting bits from fad diet, that fad diet, about what I should or shouldn't eat for my body. And then I met Scott, and you know Scott.
I do.
His whole life is about health and wellness. You know, his background is in personal training, but then he studied nutrition. He loves cooking healthy food. So through our from the very beginning of our relationship, I mean, I was also vegan and vegetarian until I met Scott, and then he cooked slow cooked lamb, and I was like, what have I been? What is like my body? It was like WD-40 for my body. But yeah, it was through him, and you know, he doesn't force anything on you, but I just started to understand about nutrition, and I was like, oh my God, why didn't someone teach me this when I was 15? Why? It was, you know, it wasn't like a light bulb moment, but like over a couple of years, I really started to understand where I'd been going wrong. And I started to enjoy food again. And I had not enjoyed food for a long time.
Yeah, it's a magical moment.
Magical moment.
And it's a great point. Why don't we teach kids about nutrition?
I don't know. I wish we did. I wish as a teenager I had that information. I think it should definitely be in schools.
I agree.
Now more than ever.
I agree.
Because I think now more than ever, kids, I mean, we didn't have Instagram when I was in high school, but I would have felt so much worse if I was looking at, you know, every perfect other person on Instagram.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, conversation for another day, but I'd really like to get it into schools.
I think, well, it could be a conversation for now, but it doesn't have to be. I think that, first of all, I want to completely agree with you. I think it's so important that we teach our kids and our teens in particular who are exposed to social media. The point you made around that is, I mean, as a parent of, you know, teen girl, teen boy, and a younger 6-year-old daughter, it is something that I've seen firsthand, the toxic impact of social media in terms of body image. To your point around, you didn't have it growing up and it would have been really hard for you. I just want to validate from a male perspective. I think a lot of guys have body dysmorphia as well. I certainly did right through my teens and probably right through my 20s and 30s. So it is something universal. We're exposed to these images of physical perfection, and we never quite feel like we're matching up to what everyone else seems to have on Instagram.
Yeah.
It's a problem. So you've met and fallen in love with Scott. He's introduced you to the wonderful world of nourishing and nutritious, great cooking.
Mm-hmm.
You have had an epiphany that whilst you trust your creative eye and you are an innate storyteller, the film industry was not the right vehicle for you. And you've just returned from a trip to the reef, which has exposed you to the ravages of environmental damage, which is just crazy up there, isn't it? It's extraordinary. All of these are starting to combine. Can you tell me about how it ultimately gelled into what was the genesis of the Good Farm Shop?
Very good little recap there, Josh. Yeah, actually, COVID hit, and Scott and I were supposed to get married at the farm. 2019, Zan's 6 months, and the fires go. It's a huge natural disaster.
It's global news.
Our farm, all the farms around, or the farm behind us got burnt down. The marquee was up for our wedding. This was a week before the wedding. And it burnt all around our farm, and our farm didn't get burnt down to the ground, but everyone evacuated. Obviously, we couldn't have the wedding there. But the whole thing about that happening was that mum, so we've had a family farm for 40 years, and it's been farmed conventionally. So
Can you just unpack that for an audience that may
yes.
not be familiar with conventional versus?
Yeah, so there's different types of farming. There's conventional and industrial farming, which uses chemicals to grow crops, essentially. And then there's another side of the other type of farming, which is like regenerative, biodynamic, organic. And that is really about no chemicals and allowing nature to do what nature does. And the great thing about regenerative farming is that it's all about the soil. And when soil is healthy, it sequesters carbon. It's the best type of farming that we can be doing for the environment. So mum starts to hear about this word regenerative farming. And, there's a lot of talk about climate change happening at this point as well. And so she goes, okay, well, we have a farm. We need to be farming responsibly. I want to be farming regeneratively. And so becomes this passion and drive, through mum to learn about regenerative agriculture. And then COVID hits, and we're all like, oh, mum won't stop banging on about regenerative agriculture. It's just another thing that we've got to listen to mum rant about. But then COVID happens, and we get stuck at the farm, lovely, like nice place to be, for a couple of months. And it was really hard to not learn about regenerative agriculture. Mick, the farmer, and mum are talking about it all the time. And suddenly we're going, oh my God, this is amazing. This is the way that we should be farming. And so then Scott and I want to be eating the beef from the farm, or at least regeneratively farmed beef. But we live in the Northern Beaches, and it's really hard to find that. We went to our butcher. We said, do you have any regeneratively farmed produce? And he was like, what? And then obviously supermarket, no. So we're like, okay, great. Well, let's do a cow share. And so we emailed, which is essentially getting an animal, cow, from the paddock and divvying it up between a bunch of people.
Yes.
Most people would think that if you walk into your butcher, out the back, there's bodies hanging, but that doesn't happen anymore. Most butchers will buy crates of cuts from an abattoir. So there's no way of knowing where that animal has come from. We've lost the connection from what we're eating on our plate to where that was grown and how it was grown. So the idea is that if you can get a cow from that paddock, then you know how it's raised, you know how the soil's been treated. So we were kind of, okay, let's try this. Let's see who's interested. And a bunch of our friends were interested. And so we did a cow share. And that was the first iteration of the Good Farm Shop. And I guess, we didn't mean really to start a business. We just wanted some of that, and we couldn't fit a whole cow in our freezer. So that was really the beginning of, I guess, like the whole next chapter of my life.
Yes. So the cow share has arrived. A Nook and Zan greeted at the door. Your friends are participating and starting to share the passion that you guys had for what regenerative agriculture can mean to the land and what it means to the animal, and therefore what it means in terms of the nutrition from that animal. At what point did the light bulb start to flicker around this could actually be bigger than us just sharing a cow with our friends?
I think it was, probably because someone said, can we get lamb? Not just beef. Can we get pork? And so we had to try and find farms, regenerative farms, that raised regeneratively farmed pork and chicken and lamb. And so 6 months later, you know, and again, we were kind of going, I guess it definitely isn't a business because we're losing money on this. But, you know, I guess in some ways you're just answering what the customer, you're just going, oh, okay, I'm hearing that the people want this, so let's try and make it work, which was really hard to make work. Like, the logistics of getting an animal off a paddock and getting it to people is really hard and really expensive. So we...
Because it's all subscale. You're
Yes.
not doing industrial farming.
We're one. Let's have one lamb. Let's have one pig. And then the transport of that, and then getting that to a butcher and butchering that, and then getting that to where we were, the warehouse, where we were storing it, where we were packing it. We were crazy. Like, this was not a good business idea. This was terrible. This was, yeah. This part of our business was, we didn't even know how bad this business was. That's how bad we were at business. We didn't even realize how much of a sinking ship it was until we finally had someone like look at our numbers and go, guys, to make this business work, you're going to have to be selling an eye fillet for this much.
Right.
And you're like, well, no one's going to buy an eye fillet for that much. So, like, I don't know, Josh, to answer your question, when was the light bulb moment? I don't know. It's hard because when you're building something based on passion,
yes,
it's actually really hard to see through the passion and go, hang on, we have to make this work monetarily as well. You're just driven by this passion.
Can I ask though?
Yeah.
Because I think there's something you said just that is, again, universal application, is that when you're working on something that is really a byproduct of your passion, and you start with no real intention, certainly no business plan, and not even necessarily an intention that it become a business, sometimes there's a benefit in not knowing what you're getting yourself into.
Yes.
Or you wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
I hear this all the time.
I would have said that about the film industry as well. You know, it was, yeah. I mean, every aspect. I'm not a planner. So every aspect of my life is stumble trip. What did I learn? How can I apply it? Yeah, thank God no one told me about, you know, any parts of my life that were going to be challenging.
So you were well down the path of the business without having necessarily done the kind of analysis and planning that people typically think they have to do ahead of time. And in fact, often when they do it, it means they don't pursue the opportunity. And you were further down the path. You were pursuing the opportunity. And even learning what you learnt through that process, you decided you wanted to persist. So at that point in time, how much was passion still driving you versus how much was it around, no, we can find a way to justify the process. We can educate the consumer. We can.
So one thing I should let you know about this whole thing is that we basically had a certain amount of money in our bank account. And that money was, you know, there was no other income coming in. I had inherited that money from my grandma. My grandma died. She left all of us a little bit of money. And that gave us the opportunity to go, okay, what could we do with this money? But because neither of us came from business, to your point, you said, you know, you didn't do any of
all the
planning
whiteboard stuff.
We didn't know what that stuff was. Like, so, yeah, so we were just basically getting to a point where that money was going to run out. And that was going to be the end of the opportunity. So I think it got quite close to that point. And we basically were like, we either have to forget about this and I'll go get a job in a bookstore. I can make coffees. Or we have to do something to make this business work.
We've got to make it work.
We actually have to start looking at the business side of this business now. And someone had worked with a woman, and they said, maybe you should speak to Cam. This woman we still helps us with our finances now in the business. So she can help you. So she was the one that said, if you're going to make this business work, you need to sell an eye fillet for this much money.
Yes.
That was around the time that and so just to give you some context about what else was happening at this point, because eye fillets fly out the door and other prime cuts fly out the door, you're left with a lot of chuck and mince. Scott's an amazing cook. He started to turn those into meals, classics, beef stroganoff, ragu, mushroom curry, and now we were selling these at the markets. So every Sunday we were getting up early, kids were tiny, we'd go to the markets, he'd set the tent up and everything, he'd take the kids, I'd spend the morning at the markets, and then he'd come and pack down, blah, blah, blah. And through that, we started to get really good feedback on these meals. People would come back, buy more the next week. So we were like, these meals are actually driving the business now. And so then we went on this trip to visit Scott's mum in England. Scott's English. And we went to one of the supermarkets there that I guess is kind of like a Harris Farm.
Yes.
I can't remember what the name of it is.
Like a Waitrose or a Martin's.
Yes, it was Waitrose. And we walked down the aisles, we were looking at ready meals. And we walked down the aisles, because my problem with ready meals is the packaging. Well, I'd never even had a ready meal before we started our business. They didn't appeal to me. I hate the look of peeling the plastic off. It's served in a plastic thing. Plastic gets thrown away. It's single-use plastic. Nothing about that appealed to me. I mean, the food doesn't look appetizing. But in Waitrose, there were these meals that were in this beautiful bamboo packaging with this beautiful artwork on them, like hand drawn. They were so charming. I was really drawn to these ready meals. We had one. It was delicious. And it wasn't all about the provenance, the food provenance, but it was certainly a level up. And I was like, Scott, this is the answer. We need this. There's dime a dozen meal companies, but none of them are have a focus on the ingredients, have a focus on the provenance. Let's pivot the business. Let's get rid of the online butchery. Let's keep our values. We still source from regenerative farms. It's still organic, and we make meals with compostable packaging. And so it took him a little while to come around to the idea. It takes him a while to come around to all ideas.
That's a guy thing.
Yeah, is it? Yeah. And then basically we came back from that trip and it was like, okay, this is what it's got to be.
Fantastic. Fantastic. I love the way you've described that whole evolution. The beginnings as a whole carcass and sharing the cow, then the move to the lambs and the pork, and the recognition that this is starting to become a bit of a business, the moment of reality with your financial advisor that kind of took your breath away at the time, but you were persisting, but then a realization that you could draw on all the vision and values that underpinned the brand promise, the Good Farm brand promise, could be applied to meals, not just raw ingredients. And indeed, you were getting evidence that that's what the customer wanted. And that is a light bulb moment. How did you at that point in time pivot? Because that's a whole different supply chain. It's a whole different operational structure.
Yeah.
What did that look like?
Yeah, it meant that, well, firstly, we couldn't buy whole animals from farms. So it was relying on us to find a business that was doing what we were doing, but making it work. And we didn't think that existed, but it did. Provenir, who we work with now, they were doing that. Their business was sourcing from regenerative farms, but a level up from that, they're the only company in Australia that uses a mobile abattoir, that has a license to. Actually, there's maybe a couple more now.
Okay.
But when we found them, they were the only ones that had a mobile abattoir so they could go and process the animals on the farm. So the animals don't even leave the farm to go to the abattoir. It is like so not stressful for the animal. Yes, the animal dies, but it's like the least amount of stress the animal goes through. So we started speaking to them. Chris, the owner, is an incredible man. Like, he has built his business again out of passion. And he's made it work. And so that freed us up to not have to buy whole bodies, which was really expensive. So now we're able to buy the cuts that we need, which is predominantly those cuts that are left over. Great for them because they're selling eye fillets. You know, they are an online butchery. So great that suddenly they have someone to buy all the cuts that no one really wants.
Yes.
And new packaging, like we had to find a compostable packaging thing. That was the whole thing. It was like, okay, can we get those containers? Can we get those beautiful bamboo things in Australia? No, we couldn't. But we found these ones that are as good, made of sugarcane pulp, completely compostable, oven safe, freezer safe. And that was like that. Those two things made it work. Like, we could do this. So I think, you know, we maybe started with five different SKUs. And then over time, we added more. We had to find a kitchen to cook out of. Oh my gosh, that's a whole other story.
You've touched on some of the non-negotiables for the brand. So regen sourcing, obviously, biodegradable, compostable, oven safe, packaging materials. It occurs to me that there's a point in every business's evolution where you come up against growth opportunities that there's some friction between what you're wanting to do from a vision and values perspective and an opportunity to grow faster or to grow more profitably. And every single business I've ever worked with in business to consumer has had these moments where they've had to decide, do we compromise on our vision and values and secure a better financial outcome, or do we stay true, knowing that that sense of genuine commitment to higher purpose is the only reason we're doing this, is the only reason our community is following us. Can you think of moments where you had those kind of discussions with Scott around, do we compromise on this or do we hold our
with Scott? There was never, for either of us, there was never we were never going to compromise. I would just not be in a business. If we would, the whole reason that we did it was because we believed in this way of farming. And I think that if you don't have the passion behind it, the business side of it becomes really hard. And then I would have quit a long time ago, you know, if I didn't have that holding it. But like, one example is we had, I won't say what supermarket it was, but we went and presented our range to this supermarket, and they loved them. They loved the meals. Their feedback was, we love the meals, nothing to say about those. You'll have to change the packaging because we need it to be sturdy enough that it can be packed into crates. Even though our meals are frozen, they're like a brick. Like, they are sturdy. But so essentially saying, we don't really care about the compostable side of things here. Get some packaging that isn't going to be a problem for us.
Yes.
In the way that we move things around. They didn't believe that if people couldn't see the meals, they didn't believe that they would sell. Ours have a top over them and a label around. You can't see the meal. So they wanted see-through packaging. So like plastic sleeve on top to be able to see it. They wanted our meals to be in line with the price of their other meals.
Not possible.
Not possible. And they wanted single serves. I was like, you've got those meals on your shelf. Why do you want us to change everything to be another meal that you've got on your shelf? So this all came in an email. I wrote several emails back saying, just clarifying each point, but essentially saying, no, we can't make those changes. If it was in line with the other meals that you have on your shelf, that we could not source organic produce, we could not source from regenerative farms, we could not use the packaging that we use. Well, they don't want that anyway. I was never going to do plastic. So, but that's a 1-second decision for us. We were like, see you later. No worries.
There's something wonderful about having that clarity.
Yeah. Yeah. You don't waste time on thinking about whether or not you should adhere to that. It's just not even a thought in our mind.
This high purpose, the commitment to regenerative agriculture that unites you and Scott, everyone else in the business, and your entire community of customers. I read that the fundamental premise of regen is that if you let nature do its thing, and you are a cooperating dance partner, as it were, with nature, then it's better for the environment, it's better for the soil, it's better for the animals, it's better for us because it's more nutritious. And
Of course.
it just seems like a no-brainer.
Yeah.
And yet it's still the exception, not the rule.
Yeah, it is a no-brainer. As soon as people start to understand about regenerative farming, they're like, oh my God. But the thing is that people don't know there's actually another way. People don't know how bad farming has gotten. Like, I didn't know.
Because we're so disconnected.
Well, we're
to
so
your point
disconnected.
earlier.
And you kind of have to go seeking that information as well. But as soon as you start to Google factory farming or industrialized farming, and you see how much land has been cleared to grow food, grow corn, wheat, all those things, and with chemicals, it's alarming. And then you see that there's another way and what that does and how much it is the opposite and how good it is for the land, the animals, for us. You sign up to that. That's what I mean why it's so hard to compromise, because you're like, no, can't you see the difference?
Till, I think you have nailed it in terms of the benefit of regen. And yet we've also touched on the fact so few people truly understand the benefits of farming this way and eating this way. And I want to return to Till the storyteller, because through your social media work with the Good Farm Shop, you've found a way, I think, to connect to a really broad audience and bring a topic that is in some ways scientifically kind of dense and ecologically kind of dense, and make it feel playful and fun and unintimidating. And I think there's a lot of people out there who would like to improve the way they eat and are attracted to the idea of eating in a way that's both ecologically better and also nutritionally better. But it can be a bit intimidating. And I think you've found a way to really reduce the barriers. How do you think about your role now as kind of co-founder, ambassador, spokesperson for the Good Farm Shop, but in a way, ambassador and spokesperson for a much broader movement?
I've gone through sort of phases. At the beginning, I was much more trying to recruit. I was much more like, come on, we've got to do it this way. Look what's happening. But I hate doing it that way. Because I don't like it when people do that to me. All that makes me do is want to shut off and block my ears and put my head in the sand. I'm much more receptive to ideas and, things when it is playful and it's not, you should be doing this. So that's the tone that I try and do in the Good Farm Shop.
It looks like you're having fun.
Well, I would be bored if I had to do that and I couldn't have fun with it. That's the other thing. I never wanted it to be, food on a plate. There you go. I really don't like selling to people. It's not really in my nature to be, buy this, do this. And I would be bored with that. Yeah. So I think that I do try to make it light because it can be a subject that can be quite heavy. And I probably do like 10 posts without mentioning regenerative farming. And then I'll be like,
don't forget,
regenerative farming is good. Yeah, it's taken a while for me to work that out. But I think that people are way more receptive to it because it's playful.
I think so too. It feels like a celebration of good food and family and the ritual of eating together and nourishing yourself and taking joy in nourishing your family. It's so warm and welcoming and inspiring. There's no sense of that being lectured to.
Well, that's good.
But you know that all that science is there if you want to go looking.
Yeah.
It's on the website. There's a ton of links. There's great research. So I think you found a way to create genuine affection for a brand and real community around a movement in a way no one else has in this space. I think the way you're doing it is fantastic.
Thank you. Well, it's also personal. Like, as you've heard, it's very hard for me to take myself out of the equation. And so inevitably it ends up being very personal. And that's probably more interesting for people than just, being a business where you don't see any of that. I think people engage much more with personal business accounts than they do with just business accounts.
Absolutely. I think the overused term authenticity is actually highly relevant. Yeah. It is authentic.
Yeah.
And we're all craving it. We're so sick of bot and AI content. It's really refreshing to have a message being delivered by someone who clearly, truly believes in it and is presenting in a way that's really entertaining. I want to pivot to kind of lessons from your life that I think could be applicable to a whole bunch in the audience. Those who are perhaps early on in their journey as an entrepreneur, or those who are working through, do I persist with this or not? Those who are juggling motherhood and young kids and being an entrepreneur. In fact, let's start there.
Right.
So,
okay. Yeah.
Because I think it's a real challenge for a lot of young women to even imagine how they could manage the rigors, the time commitment, the emotional output, all the rest of it, the financial commitment to building a business. So just imagine someone in the audience who has a young family, is in every other regard overdue, ready to take the plunge and launch their own business of some description, but they just can't quite reconcile the role of mum and what that entails and the demands of entrepreneur and what that means. How do you balance it all?
I would not recommend it.
Okay, next question.
No. It's one of those things where if someone had told me how hard it was to do both things, I may not have done it. At the same time, I think there's pros and cons. There was a big part of me as a mum that felt guilt that my time was divvied up between starting a business and raising 2 small kids. Having said that, I have these moments sometimes where I think about, because our kids know that we have built a business. Like they're young, Anouk's 4 and Zan's 6, but they now understand the concept of the Good Farm Shop. They understand that mummy and daddy have a business and that mummy and daddy have to work sometimes. Or the daddy goes to the kitchen and that sometimes mum has to do work even when they're here. And I've had a lot of guilt around that. But the flip side of that is that they've seen us build something and they will continue to see us build something. And the value of that may be what, that they might take a lot from that. I hope they take a lot from that. They've also seen, actually, I said this on Instagram recently that I don't know how I said it, but it came up in a post. And someone wrote this beautiful response. This woman who was like, she was like, I'm 75, and I just want to let you know that as hard as that has been, those kids have seen how hard you have worked. And that's really important for them. And I really appreciated that, because I think you don't often see that.
No.
That's not the thought that I have. I just feel guilt.
Yes.
So, but to go back to your point, like, what would I say to that mum? I would actually say, like, just start. Just start, and you can go as fast or slow as you want. If you're me, you'll go fast, because I don't have a slow way of being. But you just go at your own speed. And you can be someone who chips away at something. You got an extra 15 minutes, your kids are napping, just take that time to work on it. You don't have to have a whole day to do it. You don't have to do it that person's way. Do it your way. I don't think our way was at all conventional. We certainly didn't know what we were doing. Be okay with making mistakes. Learn from them. Yeah, and I think really find the purpose and the value in it for you, because that is going to be what keeps you going when it gets really hard, because it's going to get really hard.
That's a great message. I also think of the point that you made around authentic founder-led content, or you didn't use those words, they're my corporate kind of words, but that someone watching you and you're so comfortable on camera and you're so accomplished as a communicator, some people might feel intimidated by that as well. And we're all told endlessly that, we are the best spokesperson for our brand and we need to get comfortable creating social media. I'm terrible at it, so I have complete empathy for all those who are terrible at it. You seem incredibly comfortable with it, but I wonder if that was always the case, and even if it was, whether you had some advice for someone who perhaps hasn't had the experience that you've had behind a camera and in front of one.
In the words of my father, get on with it. Get on with it. It's only you getting in the way of that. I think if you want to be what was the words that you used?
Like the founder-led brand.
Founder-led brand. There's no way around it. So get on board. Do 100 takes if you have to before you find the right one. Just practice. No one's forcing you to put it out if it's shit. Just put the camera up, get in front of it, shoot some content, do a course. There are lots of courses out there for people who are uncomfortable being in front of the camera, and how to make a good reel and what text to put on it. And there's just so many of those now. So start learning and start getting better at it.
Just start.
Just start.
So I'm thinking also of members of the audience who are early on in their journey around better understanding food and nutrition. And specifically to those wanting to dive into the potential of regen, are there any books specifically that you would recommend or other sources for their self-directed learning?
Funny you should say that. I have a pile of books for this exact question.
I'm not surprised to hear that.
Literally.
Straight off the coffee table.
Yeah. So obviously you can read a book.
Yes.
But you could also audio and I like to listen to audiobooks and go for a walk.
Of course. So we got some theory and we've got some practice. You can put it straight into practice in the kitchen, which is fantastic. I think your customers are, based on my assessment through your social media, pretty engaged. They're big believers in what you're doing, and you've got a very vibrant two-way conversation going on with your community. What do you hope they become ultimately, beyond the transaction of selling them food? What are you hoping to achieve with that growing community?
I don't know if I'm hoping to achieve anything, if I'm honest. I don't really think about it in those terms. I never want it to be a one-way street. So I hope that I give back. I feel like, yes, they are engaged, and I'm grateful for them for hanging around. We've got like 118,000 followers, which isn't a huge amount, but it's, I guess to some people it's quite a lot. But amazingly, like we'll people will stop us and go, just wanted to say, I follow you on Instagram and I buy your food and thank you. And it is so lovely. That is what I love about that community, because you don't get to have, it's not real life, and you forget that, when someone stops you in the street and says that, it suddenly becomes real. These are real people that you're connecting with. I hope that people continue to feel a genuine, like, want to come up and say that. And I love that they feel that they can do that. I don't know if that answers your question.
It does. It's fantastic. In closing, is there anything that we haven't spoken about that we should have? And I'm thinking specifically, you've got such an interesting journey as to be here today as a co-creator of a thriving business, wife to Scott in creative and romantic partnership, mum to two great kids, etc., etc. I could go on.
Thanks, Scott.
But it's been a really interesting journey to get here, and I just wanted to open the floor. Is there anything else that you would like to leave the audience with in terms of just key lessons or insights or wisdom that you'd like to share?
Probably I would just say, it's so funny because we just did this R.M. Williams campaign, and I feel like I'm just ripping off what Dad said.
They won't mind.
But I've always thought this as well, because I've always gotten so much from this. And it's, if you can, walk towards the fear. Don't let it stop you. Because that's the difference between someone who does something and someone who doesn't do something, or someone who creates something and someone who doesn't. It is just getting out of your own way, that fear, and doing it. And then the other thing that I would say is, it feels horrible in the moment, but the failures are really good lessons. And so if you can take the lesson from it, you'll be grateful for it. You'll be grateful for that failure or for that reason it didn't work. And also, like, it's boring to just have a story of success. Like, people are so much more interesting when they have a journey.
It's the hero's journey.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And I don't think there are any stories that are true that are about constant success. But that's just the edited version we're getting on social media.
Oh yeah, that's what I was going to say. It's so hard to talk about things that are like, it's so hard to talk about shame, failure, when you're in it. In retrospect, it's so much easier. And really the only reason that I can talk about all of that stuff is because I've been able to get to the other side of it. But when I was going through my eating disorders, and when our business was really, when it was struggling, we were like, oh, is this ever going to work? I couldn't have got on here and done this podcast. And so I would just say, like, just go easy on yourself, because everybody has gone through that.
On that very hopeful and inspiring note, thank you, Till.
Thanks, Josh.
It's been such a pleasure.
Likewise.